Welcome back, everybody, to another Full Tank Motorcycle podcast episode. We are here at the Bike Shed Show 2024.
And look, we've come here to give you a little walk around of the show. There are so many amazing bikes to see. I can't recommend enough coming to this show. It's one of our favourites, if not our favourite motorcycle show of the year. And you can't beat being here. I believe there's 270 bikes this year, and we're just going to scratch the surface. So we've picked out about 10 or so of our favourites. So join us for a little walk around to see some of these, frankly, beautiful hand-built custom motorcycles. Now, first up, we've got a whole bunch of amazing builds by individuals and amateurs, but also the big brands get involved as well. And so in this first room, we've actually got a little bit of a display here from Ducati with their Scrambler lineup. And interestingly, and perhaps excitingly, they've got two new prototypes, one of a bit of a cafe racer style bike in a beautiful champagne paint job, and the other is a little bit more apocalyptic, I would say, slightly like a Mad Max inspired vibe. And I really do like what they've done. Whether these are an indication of what's to come on the sort of main Scrambler production lineup, I don't know. But you'd imagine that maybe something like this could make it to the market. The level of finish is good enough anyway. But the question for you, Timothy, is, of the two, which of these two bikes would you most A, like to see being produced, and B, like to ride and own?
Good questions. I think I've seen them actually taking a little poll of people as well. So I think that they are using this as a bit of a testing pool to see which one they would want to bring to market. So get your votes in for whichever one you want. I think for me personally, I love both of them. Just where my mindset is at the moment, I'd probably go for the utilitarian-looking, scramblery one behind us. I like that kind of smart pillar-esque, like I say, utility to it, really, where you can strap stuff to it, which is really cool. It looks more purposeful. The only thing I think both of us said we'd like to see different on it is maybe some risers, so that it's a little bit more functional as an actual scrambler, so you could maybe take it on some dusty trails. Having said that, I mean, that Cafe Racer is beautiful, and it is a really tough decision between the two. How about yourself?
I don't know. I really enjoy road riding on these, like we always say, 70-ish horsepower bikes. I really feel like you can get a lot out of the bikes. And so some of the changes on it, I believe they put a 17-inch front wheel on it, would make it handle a little bit better. And then, of course, that one gets clip-on handlebars as well. They are quite risen up, so not that aggressive. And I think that would make for a really, really good, fun, not too serious, but still quite sporty ride on the road. Now, before we get on to the next build, I just want to say a huge thanks to today's sponsor, and that's NordVPN. And it really does mean a lot to us because it means we can come down to the shows, me and Tim, and bring you all of these brilliant bikes because of their support. Now, if you're not familiar with what NordVPN does, it's an app that you download on your phone or your laptop or any device, and it massively decreases the chances of anyone getting hold of your data that you leave behind when you're browsing online. Now, VPN stands for Virtual Private Network, and it's basically a private tunnel for your web traffic, and it also encrypts it, and so that means people can't snoop on you and spy on you, and that includes your own ISP or internet service provider who may want to sell on your data to third parties. So look, whenever we're working in public locations like this using public Wi-Fi, I always use NordVPN to make sure that my traffic is private. But also, it means that you can switch countries by using a server in a different location. And on some streaming providers, that means you can actually access different content. And with a relatively niche interest like motorcycling, it can really open up a bunch more shows. It just costs a few dollars a month, so I think it's totally worth it for your privacy. But also, there's a link down in the description below where you can find out more. And it also includes a massive discount for our listeners and a few months for free thrown into the deal. So once again, a huge thanks to NordVPN for their support. And with that, let's get back to the builds. Right, we're over at the Triumph London stand, and I'm with Charlie Stockwell, formerly of Wars, and you did a lot of kind of Harley builds, really amazing, and now you've moved over to doing quite a lot of Triumph stuff.
Do a lot of Triumph now. So yeah. I've been with Lind for almost 2 years. We still do the Harley stuff. Got BMW, got a couple of Porsche stores, but I'm concentrating a lot on the Triumph brand now, which is very new to me.
Any challenges with that of transferring over? Is it like you have to relearn some technical stuff to the builds? Or?
Tools are different. Everything Imperial before, now it's back to metric. But no challenges. I mean, it's like a bike is a bike. I'm restyling them. So you can kind of adapt, or you can share styles from your Harleys to your Triumphs, but Triumph has surprised me in the quality of their stock stuff. Engines, finish, paint, everything. It's it's been a real pleasure working with them.
So we've got a trio of bikes here today then, a Scrambler 400X and a couple of 1200s. I guess, can you talk us through the sort of general concept?
So I decided to go with a concept that was totally against the norm from Stockwell design. We normally go for black, white and gold, the signature flame, but to stand out, we're going to go with a different vibe. I wanted 1980s bar hard desert racer, something I grew up watching and loved, and have never done, but always dreamed, or it's probably still a dream that I never get to do. But I love the idea, I love the look of those bikes. So again, go away from the black, go for a white base, and go for vibrant colours.
Yeah.
I never do colours.
Right.
So I'm like, well, this time let's pick some outrageous colours. We go for that kind of violet. We've got this Scrubs green, apparently that is called. Nurses' uniforms in the States.
Yeah.
And it's not Deliveroo, honest. And then we've got for that kind of marigold yellow. All right. So I thought, well, they kind of work together. They work, they complement each other. And to build bikes that were achievable to repeat, they look like a lot has been done, but we've got a vintage motocross front fender on the 400, a little windshield that we painted to look more like a fairing rather than a windshield, retrimmed the seat, quickly made up a header to fit the S&S FTR 1200 muffler to this. So one of, I think, S&S's nicest looking mufflers. It does fit an Indian. So we have to modify the intake for it, but it's a simple fix. Metzler Karoo 4s, they look great, but you've probably ridden them on a bunch of times. Good for road and good for the type of maybe green laning that someone might do on a bike like this. It's a good crossover for styles, I find. And I always trust Metzler. The 1200X, you probably know a lot more about these bikes than I do because you've ridden them many, many more miles than me.
I borrowed one this year. It's a really good bike. A little bit lower slung, isn't it? So a bit more achievable, I think, for some people.
I think it was needed.
Yeah.
Because you had the two before, the XC and the XE, right? And they were kind of too similar, I thought.
Quite tall, both of them. Yeah, I think so.
But and I love that because it's a little bit more blacked out as well. So we've got quite a visual difference. Again, following the same vibe. Keep it simple, change a few bits. But I think the Scrambler is a great looking bike stock. It's one of the nicest production bikes ever built. So all I've done with this is use a pair of Rocket 3 headlamps. I wanted to keep it Triumph, and I think it's quite a nice touch. Weld up the framework to hold the lights on. That was a little bit fiddly because you want to make it removable. You can't just make it so it's fixed. That would be easy for me, but again, a little windshield and then retrimmed to fit over twin lights as opposed to a single headlamp. Front fender. It was like a UFO motocross fender. It was like $50 or something. So a little bracket to make it fit beneath the triple trees, and the threaded holes are already there. And retrim the front mudguard, or cut the front mudguard in half and just use the fork guards. And then it was just really playing with paint, remake a seat, recover that, ceramic coat the stock exhaust, which I think is an awesome shape, so there was no need to change it.
Yeah.
Ceramic coat, I wanted that 80s magnesium.
I was going to ask about that engine cover. It's got a nice sheen to it, yeah.
It's that piece that actually makes that bike my favourite in the show. So clutch cover, alternator cover, ceramic coated on that one, just to break up some of the black, or it would look a little bit like we've rattle canned it. And that was that. The rest of it, the running gear is all stock on this bike. Yellow and white one over the back is the XE model, so a little bit taller. Otherwise, exactly the same spec as this. Fabricated the headlamp mounts, twin Rocket 3 headlamps, power bronze screen painted to look like fairing, UFO front fender, retrim seat. Otherwise, it's all reworked stock items. So achievable builds, but really attractive. And we're here, working with Triumph London, Vauxhall dealership under Arch 68. You've been down there, haven't you?
Yeah, it's an amazing little location.
It's a really cool shop. It's the nicest looking of our Triumph stores. It's got a really good vibe.
You can see through to the workshop.
You can go all the way through to the workshop, out into the lively park at the back, restaurants all around us. So it's a great destination dealership because there's so much to do. We've always got custom bikes being built. It's always round full of customers and service bikes. The guys are churning these things out all the time in the workshop. But because you've got the big glass But the width of the dealership is glass, so you can see everything that's being built, everything that's being worked on.
Amazing. Well, they look fantastic. I really like the touch of the Rocket 3 headlights. Like you say, it makes it look a bit factory. Just the little Triumph logo is still set into there and stuff like that.
And that's all it is, and most people wouldn't notice it, but when you do, it's quality.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for talking us through them.
Thank you, mate.
And good
Pleasure.
to see you.
Lovely to see you as well.
Right, into the next room. And I know you're a bit of a Moto Guzzi fan, Tim. It's well publicised on the podcast. And so I thought that 1000cc beast over there would probably tickle your fancy.
Yeah, my eye gets drawn to it immediately, probably mainly because of the colour. It is so Italian. I love it. It's like Formula One red. I'm sure it's got a different name attached to it. But yeah, it glows in this room. It really is nice. And if I sound a little bit too effusive about it, that's probably just because I would own that. Of the bikes we've seen today, I think that's one of the ones that I would absolutely keep in my garage.
So we've done a little lap of the whole show before we started filming, just to get an eye for the bikes we really like. Is that possibly, of everything you've seen, right up there?
I mean, it's top 5, definitely, because I could see myself owning it, and I'd be so proud to turn up on that thing. And I'm sure it's really fun to ride as well, because it's an older 1000cc Moto Guzzi, so it's the kind of bigger lump, if you like. So really torquey, but even more torquey than normal. It's a great bike.
What I like about some builds, and that's a really good example of it, is the older bikes, but with the modern components. So, modern brake calipers like the radial Brembos. And on that particular one, they've got the black Öhlins twin piggyback shocks, and then a right way up fork, but it looks like a really modern Öhlins build, and it just contrasts so nicely against the rest of the bike. Hard agree on the paint job as well. Looks brilliant, especially with gold wheels, which always look fantastic. Now, also in this room, we've got Pierce City Cycles as well from Brighton. They do a lot of BMW builds. They've got a few different bikes on show, but the one that's caught my eye is this Marlboro Racer. I don't know if it's actually built on the R90 Racer. I think it might be, but they've just given it a really pop-in paint job with a yellow frame and then a Marlboro paint job across the tank, the fairing, the seat cover as well there. And it's very, blocky and bright. It's almost primaries, but I think it really does work. And that is right up there for me.
Top 5?
Yeah, I think it's one of them. I like it a lot. Now, Pierce City, like I was saying, they build a lot of BMWs, but actually BMW have got their own dedicated room here with a few of their production models like the R18s and the R12s on show. But also in this room, built by individual custom shops, we've got a few more classic air-cooled boxers, and this is like a very common bike, isn't it, to build up and customize?
What are you trying to say?
Well, for a reason.
No, it makes sense. I was saying the same thing when we were walking around. So what's great about it is it's like the Bonnevilles, and if you want to customize a bike, it's one of those platforms where there are so many third-party companies that you can buy almost bolt-on stuff. In fact, I would call them bolt-on stuff. It doesn't require a huge amount of mechanical knowledge. And there's also loads of YouTube channels and things that will show you how to fix these, build these yourself. So you're not kind of in the dark. You're not having to make it up on your own. So you can feel a little bit safer in that sense. And they obviously look really good too.
Yes, and some of the examples we've got here are probably like how far you can take it if you do know how to go that bit further than doing the bolt-on stuff. And a couple here that are really, really nice, I think are from Sinroja Motorcycles. I think they have bikes in the show pretty much every year, but I really do like these. Now, these are both built upon the R100 RT. Yep. My dad used to have an R80 RT, and I'm going to have to think about how to phrase this nicely, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's a cool-looking bike, and it certainly doesn't look very custom. That is one of the biggest fairings for a touring bias bike that you can ever get, and so to see how good they look, if you strip away all that extra bodywork and stuff, is really quite impressive. And there's two here that really have caught my eye. One in a matte black tank, and then one in what we said was a champagne rosé paint job, which is actually a colour that works perfectly on that bike, especially because the rest of it's all blacked out. Which one you'd pick out the two, though?
Out of the two, I would be going with that little rosé coloured one. I like the fact that they've still gone with a blacked out engine. So obviously you can accentuate that and make it the sort of bare metal colour if you want to, but it's really nice because then you get to do things like polishing the fins and stuff like that, which my brother did. And as we've mentioned several times, this is the exact same bike that my brother has, so the R100 RT with the fairing.
Oh, was
it? Like boat fairing that you have to take off, and it's, they look great when you strip them back like this, but there's a little bit of extra work goes into it because Things like the clamps are slightly higher and stuff, and the bars are slightly higher. So there's a bit more work goes into it, but good platform.
A geometry tweak to get it to ride more like a naked bike. Anyway, fantastic, both of them. Thing is though, not all the builds have to be logical, do they, Tim? Because this little bike here is somewhat of a juxtaposition, one that you've got a bit of experience with as well.
Yeah, speaking as someone who owned this bike before, that's why it dragged me over here, because I was like, that looks like my bike. And it's not a bike to get excited by, maybe the newer ones, but it's a Honda Hornet, which I had loved it. But I definitely wouldn't be, well, I probably would be doing this as a custom job, but it doesn't make any sense, because it should not be a Scrambler Mad Max style bike.
Knobbly tyres, a little bench seat, big wide scrambler bars, and then a 600cc inline four that likes to be revved.
That loves revving, really, really high. So, not ideal if you were ever going to go and take this thing off-road, but it looks really cool.
And I do appreciate that. Sometimes you just have an idea for something that you think might look cool, and it doesn't really matter if it's a sensible thing to do or a logical thing to do, because the outcome can be something unique and different, and you probably love it as well, having spent so much time on it. And so for me, I love seeing stuff like this as well. Now, this next bike is owned by Gareth of the Bike Shed. Some of you might recognize him if you watch their YouTube channel. He does a lot of their content, and it is a really spectacular looking bike, this one.
I mean, the colorway is the first thing you see, but the fact that it's got that like brushed, I guess, aluminium look to it with a little bit of color to it. So it's got the orange in there, which looks great. Yeah, I mean, it's stunning. I love the front fairing on it as well, and I really like the base. The fact that they've gone for a GSXR750, which is renowned for being one of the most enjoyable bikes to own, is a great start.
I guess you could have probably worked out that it was someone who worked at the Bike Sheds from the big BSMC logo across the side of the tank, but they do have a lot of different logos and fonts and stuff, and so you can probably find something amongst their visual language that will fit nicely on a bike. It does look cool. Now, you were talking about the name of this one.
Yeah.
Wabi
Slabby, what does it mean?
So, this is just a fluke that I actually know what this means. Wabi Sabi is, I think, a Japanese philosophy around the idea of taking pleasure from the beauty of disorder. So nature, for example, Wabi Sabi means like it's beautiful because it's not uniform and organized. I guess the slabby is a reference to the engine there. Is that called a slab? Is that the nickname for it?
Yeah, I'll go with that. Yeah, I think it is.
It's a play on words,
yes.
mate.
I like it.
It's gone slightly above our heads.
No, that makes sense. But also the fact that, I guess taking beauty from disorder, not to call it disordered, but it's kind of, it is a beautiful disorder. Like the little bits of purple in there shouldn't really work, but they do.
They do, definitely. A bit of anodization, tastefully done. If you do it across the whole bike, all the little bolts and stuff, too much. But on some choice parts there, definitely adds a little pop. Also in this room, we've got a build by a chap called Ollie who lives quite close to me, and I've actually featured this bike on the channel, but prior to having this massive makeover, I was doing a comparison of the current Speedtwin 1200 with the upgraded fork and upgraded brakes to the previous generation, so we used his bike, but he's actually done loads and loads of work on it. It's got carbon bits, it's got all sorts of upgrades, but the big one is it's supercharged now. I believe it adds masses of power, and he's actually said at some point I might be able to take it for a spin and see what that's like.
Go careful. There's a lot of people that depend on you.
My question is, is that chassis built to handle double the power or whatever it's going to make?
Yeah, it's a tough call, that really, isn't it? I mean, it's very cool to do it. It's, why wouldn't you if you could? But does it really result in more performance? I'm not so convinced, because there's only so much you can put down before you just start lifting that front, so...
We'll see. He has been slightly sensible. He's upgraded the brakes as well. So it's got Brembos on it. I think they're bigger discs. If you're going to go faster, you're going to need to stop quicker as well. Now, there's a TRX 850 over there, which I think really nails that sort of slightly modern. We're used to all the customs like the choppers and things and maybe the retro 60s and 70s stuff. But this 80s and 90s scene that's emerging, I think it really absolutely nails like a good looking bike with that kind of aesthetic. I like the blocky bodywork, the slightly off to one side asymmetrical headlight, and also that flat grey. It looks a bit like Nardo grey. Is that what I'm thinking?
Yeah.
With some white panels, white wheels.
The white wheels, that is something that, it really stands out. I love it. Have you seen the swing arm on that thing as well? It is seriously industrial looking.
Definitely looks like a bit of a rider's bike as well, that. There's some here that obviously they're bum on the floor, arms up, Probably not really built to handle, more for the looks, but that thing I reckon will be a bit of a weapon as well. One that we didn't spy on our first navigation of the show that kind of caught your eye just then was that air-cooled BMW, another one, but that's taken it in quite a different direction.
Yeah, that one is very unique looking, and that sort of proves that walking around this thing, we are just scraping the surface. That you go around it a second time and you actually use spot bikes that probably are your favourites now. That's definitely in my top 5. Something about twins that I just really like, and that sort of configuration. But that one, for me, 2 things. The colour is stunning, and the fact that they've kind of got that offset with the engine block as well. And then the exhaust on the back is so unique. And if you've got a pillion, I feel for them, I really do, because their arse is going to get so hot on there. And then the clocks and the top yoke and stuff, it's beautiful.
I've only just noticed the exhaust system you're talking about, but basically it collects them into the middle there, under the seat, and then comes out of this sculpted exit right at the back there. Really is fantastic. And then another bike that's caught our eye as well is the one from Sticky's Speed Shop, I believe. We mentioned it in a previous podcast episode of having a very neon popping lightning bolt paint job. I think the footage that we showed of it last time, it wasn't actually finished and they were still applying the paint job. But now that it's done, it really does have a bit of presence to it as well, doesn't it?
Definitely, yeah.
Also looks like a good bike to ride. You know, it's a Ducati underneath. I think a 900 SS. And also a few little upgrades to it from a technical perspective as well. But mainly, just looks fantastic. And a bit of polish on the frame and swing arm just sets it off. Fantastic. Now, next up, we're just over at Alpinestars because they've actually got a collaboration with the Bike Shed in that they've got some new airbag vests. I think you typically associate airbag vests with looking quite technical like this, but actually they've applied that Bike Shed design language and style, and I think they look really, really good. But we're just about to have a technical demo from our good friend Tim, who's about to get pumped up.
Yeah, so for audio only listeners, I will describe the feeling of getting squeezed like a sausage. I think we're good to go. Oh yeah, okay, good. So that's obviously a lot slower than it would be, yeah, if it were to go off.
You look hench.
Thanks, man. I've been working out.
You've been working out?
Yeah. It's a show.
When you let it down, does it give a whoopee cushion kind of?
Yeah, it should do, yeah. So that's good. I can feel the coverage for sure. Yeah, test my shoulders.
Very good.
I can see the appeal in that. And I think, like you said, right, the really nice thing is that it's in a package that I definitely could see myself buying, which is the vest.
Yeah, they look fantastic,
right? It looks really good, and you can stick it over anything you want to, so I like that a lot.
They are still a little bit on the pricey end for gear. I think those are just over 500 quid for the vests. But, you know, as they always say, how much you value it.
It's true, and also worth bearing in mind, it's not a subscription. You buy it, it's yours, you can do with it what you want.
Now, over at one of the other brands that's really supported this event is Royal Enfield, and they've got a fantastic array of builds here. They come every year, I believe, and they do quite a lot of stuff that's fairly out there as well. They push the boundaries of what's possible with their bikes. 2 that really stand out for me this year, both of them 650 twins, and one is a Continental GT Cafe racer that I think has been designed in collaboration with Top Gear.
Yes.
The website and YouTube channel and whatnot. And the rough idea is to turn the Continental GT into a little bit of a touring cafe racer. So they've gone for the baggage. You've got a bit of a windscreen, which I guess you could tuck in behind and get a little bit of protection from. But it's really the paint job that dominates. Very pop-in, noticeable, probably very safe on the motorway. People see you come in.
Very true.
Especially with the matching painted lid.
Yeah, I actually didn't see that. So this one I have seen previously as well. Like I told you, I got hands on it, which just sounds a bit creepier than it should.
Did you see it?
So this is Max Vanoni was building this, and obviously had a chance. Clearly, the Royal Enfield Chelsea branch, the Urban Rider partnership. So actually, I have seen this. Obviously, the silhouette of it, the shape of it is really well designed, well considered. But if you want to stand out in this sort of format, this is one you spot your first time around the show, right? You don't have to go and inspect it. It calls out to you.
Next to it, though, we've also got another, well, it's another 650 twin, but this one's an Interceptor. And I don't think I've ever seen an Interceptor like it. It's not a bike that you would generally describe as a performance-orientated machine, but this is another one of those where you take what is a fairly simple and classic retro bike and then add some top-notch performance-orientated components to it, and the result is at least something that looks fantastic, even if maybe it's not that punchy to ride. They're about 40 odd horsepower, aren't they? but they've got a wavy disc on the front there with some Brembo radial brake calipers. They've put a completely different swing arm on it. It looks like something off a super sport bike, and as such you've got different wheels as well. You've got some proper sporty Pirelli tyres on it, and then a really nice treatment to the top half of the bike. It looks like a different tank, but also some custom bodywork and a number board on the front, and then the headlight is located off to one side with a big yellow cover that says Daylighter. Really like that build. Like I say, probably still not going to knock your socks off in terms of acceleration, but it probably goes around corners quite nicely.
They do, yeah, they do perform really well. I remember at the bike shed track day that they arranged, the Royal Enfields actually did surprisingly well because they were really sporty and they could really tuck into a corner. Obviously Liddon Hill does sort of benefit from that as well. It's a really short track, so you don't need huge amounts of power to do quite well on it. So yeah, they can be a great performer. I think the main trick is to make it as light as you possibly can, because like you say, the power is modest.
Now, one of my favourite parts of the show is Shed Road. This is where you have to have built it at home. You have to be an amateur in order to sort of qualify for this area. But it has to be said, the level is fantastic. You know, this isn't just some crummy old bunch of bikes that have been cobbled together. There's some real skill and dedication and time gone into some of these, and not always loads of money. We were just talking to Jish, who was on the podcast a few episodes back. We did an interview with him. He was talking about the bike he built here today, and he said he only put about $1,000 or $1,500 into it. Now, I know that's still a lot of money for a lot of people, but you know, to have something that's bespoke and custom that you really love, and to be able to show it in the show, I think it just goes to show that you don't have to spend 10 or 20 grand, which some of the more pro builders will be charging, maybe beyond that, 30, 40 grand for some of these really high-end builds. So a great area, lots of good inspiration, and one that stood out to us is actually one that you said you've had the pleasure of gracing with your fair buttocks in the past.
Yeah, my buttocks have been on, maybe not that seat though, it has changed a bit since I rode it. So yeah, that one caught my eye because you actually pointed that one out and wondered what it was. So Yamaha Virago base, but that is literally just the engine, because the frame I think is custom. The tank, as you spotted, was a Ducati Scrambler tank, but this is Jimbo from the bike shed, and that thing has been through so many iterations, it's ridiculous, and you can obviously follow his whole build. He's got that on his Instagram as well. But to see what that started as, and like I say, I rode that thing, and it was hideous, and I don't even think he'd mind me saying that, because it shouldn't have been on the road. It was such a Frankenstein. The frame didn't make any sense. It was so tall, it pinched into your legs. It was lumpy, the engine didn't run smooth. Seeing it now is amazing. To see where that came from to where it is now is great. And the colour choice is absolutely beautiful. I love the kind of surf vibe to that one, because it's got that kind of puce colourway to it. I believe that I'm going to go with that one. And white wheels as well, which obviously always look great offset.
Puce, I would say, I've not heard of it before, but it's a colour that looks better than it sounds. Sure. Sounds a little bit like puke. But I reckon that bike's going to be phenomenal in terms of the sound as well. That's such a short silencer on a big V-twin like that. Fantastic. Also, single-sided swing arm. I've no idea where that comes from. I'm sure there's somebody watching this video episode who could look at that rear wheel and in a heartbeat tell you exactly which bike it's off. So if that's you, let us know in the comments. Now, if there was an award for the most transformative build, from what it's gone to what it's become now, it may well be that BMW over there. I think it looks phenomenal, and that's a real success in terms of like building some bespoke bodywork to cover it all up and make it look really different. Is that your cup of tea or not?
Yeah, I would say I get on board with that. That's sort of Triumph Rocket-esque in terms of this kind of scale of it and absurdity, if you like. But yeah, I love the look of it.
Beautiful wheels. I would also say the radiator guard, what would be a radiator guard, I suppose, maybe takes inspiration from old BMWs with those long grills that have now become so controversial on the modern BMWs. But the reason I say it's such a transformation is, can you have a guess as to what bike that was?
Is it an R9T?
It would, you know, be the first bike that would come to mind, but it isn't. It's actually an R1250R, which is the naked boxer, which I would say is not a bike that would be on my list of
oh right, yeah,
cool looking, beautiful bikes. I rode it last year on the launch, and it was brilliant. It's a great bike to ride, brilliant engine that works so well in the GS, and for a road bike, it handles much better than a GS. So, you know, it's it's good, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's something I look at and get excited and get a bit hot under the collar. And what they've done with it there to take it to that kind of place for something that really is a phenomenal statement piece, I think is really impressive. So you've got to give a shout out.
A huge shout out. I'm going to say it's sort of like 1920s, 30s-esque with the sort of the white color as well to it. I think it's got those flowing lines.
I know exactly what you mean. Not quite
Great Gatsby
steampunk,
style.
but it's that like... Yeah, that era, but then with a bit of modern to it as well, and it looks a little bit performance biased. I don't know. It's a big mix of things, but for some reason it just works. The other bike down here, we're sort of on the lower level now, that really is getting a lot of attention. A lot of people stopping to look at this, is the 600 Special. I think it's Alonze. And I saw this one a while back on the Bike Shed's YouTube channel with a bit of an interview with the builder. And it just has to be said, the amount of attention to detail that's gone into the trellis metalwork there and the amount of skill to build something like that is just seriously impressive. The disc wheels give it a very striking look, the bodywork, but for me, that fork with the monoshock up the top.
Oh, I didn't even see that. The forks are amazing.
And then the way the frame and tank sort of curve in that organic way, almost a little bit wabi-sabi.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
And then the matching swing arm out the back there. That is one of the builds of the
single
show.
straight line on that thing. It's phenomenal. Like you say, the wheels really are amazing, but this is one of those bikes where there's so much going on, proof by the fact I didn't even notice that we've got trellis forks on this thing, and then, like you say, a shock at the top. The frame, I don't even know how to wrap my head around how you would make that. It looks super skinny. The only other thing that sort of might ruin it for some people, maybe not if they know the reference, but it's exhaust. The way that it's welded looks a little bit like Dr. Octopus's arms.
I was going to say, though, that in itself, doing those pie cut exhausts must be a real skill.
Yes.
And normally on any other build, you'd be looking at that and saying, wow, look at the amount of work that's gone into the exhaust system. But because of the rest of the bike, it's almost like a side detail. And that's just not downplaying how much work they put into that. It's just the rest of it is so striking that it becomes, less at the forefront. And I think that's probably a great way to round off what has been a fantastic day here at the show. Like I say, we didn't want to cover absolutely everything because we want to leave enough to give you motivation to come next year and check it out. It really is worth a trip. Such a great place to just spend a day. There's great food and drink and music, so you can really have a good time down here at Tobacco Dock. What was your pick then in the end?
It might actually be this Ducati, yeah. It's a good way to end it. It's between that one or the BMW R80, that blue one with the exhaust under the seat for me. You? He's broken. Reset him. Someone reset him.
I honestly can't pick. And I've maybe got a bit of recency bias, but I really do love that white BMW that we just looked at, just for the sort of ambition of it. Or maybe that 850 cafe racer. Was it a TRX 850? You know the one? Yes. In the grey and the white. If I had to ride one home, probably that would be my pick. I think it looks a bit cheeky in terms of performance and also just something really nice to look at. But there's something for everyone. That's the best thing about it. All these bikes are a little bit more personality than what you get out of a manufacturer, out of the dealer. And that's what they're meant to be. Not for everybody, but they are for somebody. Anyway, a huge thanks for watching today. We really appreciate all your support. Let us know which bikes you liked down in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.